Hey guys， 大家好！上周末我到新加坡参加了2天的研习，向几位在西方最受尊敬的科学背景专业人士学习课程，包含肌肉锻炼、力量发展、备赛及减脂，能够跟我的偶像们面对面学习是一个难忘的经验。老实说，我还需要学习很多东西，这次的参与是我努力变得更好的一个方式。OK， 现在我说英文。At the seminar, I got to meet in person Alberto Nunez, a natural pro bodybuilder and coach whose stage condition is really out of this world. I also had the opportunity to spend time with Cliff Wilson and Lauren Conlin, who are coaches for bodybuilding and also bikini. And of course, Dr. Eric Helms, who was kind enough to spare some time to answer some of our nutrition and training questions. All these questions are the ones that you guys personally sent to me on Instagram about a week ago. Dr. Eric Helms is not only a natural pro bodybuilder, but also has a Bachelor of Science in Fitness and Wellness, a master's degree in exercise science, a second master's in sports nutrition, and a PhD in strength and conditioning, and is also a researcher at the Sports Performance Research Institute in New Zealand. He has published books and articles too related to exercise science and nutrition. Again, he's someone I really look up to, someone I have learned so much from, and I'm extremely grateful that he spared some time to answer these questions with us on my channel, and that he's sharing his knowledge with us in Taiwan and with other people in different parts of East Asia. Now, before we dive into the questions, I wanted to quickly apologize for some of the background noise. At the same time, I really believe that Eric's information will be of so much value to all of us, so I hope you don't get bothered by such little issue. So here are the questions. Alright, Eric, first question. How does a super skinny person gain muscle?
The same way that anyone else would gain muscle, it's just a matter of time. Most of the time when I run into really skinny guys, they tell me, oh, I'm eating so much but I just can't put on weight. How much should I eat? And the answer is always the same. More. However much you need to eat to gain weight, that's what you gotta do. And I know you might be uncomfortable, it might be difficult. Another problem that a lot of skinny guys have is they're trying to eat too clean. Like they're eating a lot of high fiber foods, very high protein, and you might want to take your protein down to closer to like 1.6 grams per kg, and then only have like 1 serving of fruit and vegetable and focus on a lot more calorie dense foods, quote unquote cheat foods. And you want to try to gain, say, 1 to 1.5% of your body weight per month at the beginning. So that's a little less than half a kilo a week for most people. Just keep eating more until you start to see, like every couple of weeks, you're up a little bit on the scale. So you don't worry about how many calories you're eating, you just worry about your rate of weight gain. And if you're not gaining weight, it's not enough.
Thank you. Next question. Somebody's fasted, right, and training in the morning, say, no food, no water, just water, no food. Is it necessary to get that protein shake right after the workout as soon as possible?
That's probably the one scenario where it might be like a measurable difference, because you've already been asleep for 8 hours and you probably didn't eat until like right before bed. You probably had dinner or maybe some late night snack, so it might be 10, 11 hours since you've eaten. I would actually recommend just having like a scoop of whey before you go. I think a lot of people think I either have to train fasted or have a massive pre-workout meal, but there's a huge gray area in the middle. If you notice you train better without much in your stomach, you don't have to put much in there. Like I only train sometimes on like a Quest bar and nothing else. So you could just simply have like a scoop of whey and then train and you wouldn't have to worry about it. Or you can make an effort to just get it in right afterwards. But I find that most people who do better fasted might do even better with just a very, very small meal. Something just to help blood glucose stabilize and kickstart that prepare process.
Okay, this question is about competition. How do you recover your metabolism after post-competition?
It's a great question. So the vast majority of the negative effects you see when you diet down for a show are primarily due to the actual reduction in calories, the low amount of body fat you got to, and also the psychological trauma you experienced. And if you try to stay lean or limit the amount of weight gain you have post-show in a very restrictive way, you can just prolong that. So the first step is to get immediately out of a deficit. There's no reason to have, stage condition unless you're going to get on stage. Being in stage condition is not conducive at all to putting on muscle. Your hormones are in the tank, your sleep quality is really low, you're stressed, you're more susceptible to injury. So what you need to do is regain a reasonable amount of body fat and also regain any lost muscle tissue. And that's not going to happen with limiting your food and being in that still dieted state. So what I normally recommend is if you've got a true stage condition, within 1 to 2 months you want to be up by about 5 to 10% over stage weight.
5 to 10%.
So if you competed at, let's say, 70 kilos, you want to be up by about 3.5 to 7 kilos of true weight gain within 1 to 2 months, not just that initial water weight gain. So once that water weight dissipates, and so let's say you competed in July, by the time September rolls around, you should probably be closer to 77 kilos without water retention. And that means that you're probably going to have your most aggressive surplus after your show. Now, what most people do is they either try to do that slow reverse diet and they really stress themselves out and just delay their off season, and most importantly, delay their recovery, or they go on an all-out binge fest and eat at every restaurant they can find. And it's very difficult.
What's the sweet spot?
The sweet spot is the middle, right? Where you give yourself a very realistic calorie goal. Like if you are, let's say you were in a deficit at the end of your show eating at 2,000 calories and you want to actually gain close to 1 kilo a week for this period, that means you need to be in 1,000 plus calorie surplus. So you're going to feel like you can increase your calories 1,500 and drop cardio. And that's something that will allow you to have all those treats, the things you're missing out on, but still maintain your structure. So you want to keep that same meal structure, you want to keep all the habits you developed in prep, but then just add on things like have a dessert. Maybe you replace your normal bodybuilder meal with, you go out to dinner with your significant other. There's no point in staying shredded, it's just going to literally keep you feeling worse for longer.
What is the difference in training for somebody who's trying to cut fat and somebody who's trying to bulk up?
It really shouldn't be much different. So either way, the process by which muscle grows is the same. So your muscles don't necessarily know if you're in a calorie deficit or a calorie surplus. And in reality, every time you eat, whether you're in a cut or a bulk, you're in a period of being in a surplus for at least a few hours. And then between meals, even if you're in the bulking season, you're in a deficit. So you come in and out of a deficit and a surplus all the time. And it's really, if this is your maintenance, it's the net accumulation. You have to spend more time here or more time here in a 24-hour period. It's going to dictate whether you're gaining mass or losing mass. So the only time you need to adjust your training is if you don't have enough recuperative abilities to handle your normal volume. So if you're doing an easy cut from, say, 20% body fat as a male to 15%, you probably don't have to change anything at all. If you're cutting from, say, 10% to 4% and getting on stage, you need to be careful. You might want to swap out some movements to being something from like a squat to a hack squat. You might be doing deloads more frequently, so you take an easy week every 4th week instead of every 6th. Perhaps you reduce your volume by 10, 15% if you find that your performance is stalling and your recovery is inhibited. But in the end, the tension stimulus that we apply to our muscles that initiates the cascade that starts hypertrophy is the same whether we're in a deficit or a surplus. So growing muscle and keeping muscle is actually the same thing physiologically, even though it looks a little different from us kind of having that big picture perspective. So largely the training principles are the same, you just have to account for the fact that your recovery might be hit if you're getting very low in body fat.
This one is a good one too. I find it very interesting. Are rest days actually necessary? Can we just train 7 times a week if we want to?
Well, it depends on what you define as training. So for example, let's say you were a power lifter and you had one day where you came in and you just did singles at 80% on the squat, bench, and the deadlift. And it took you an hour to do it, and you just did 3 singles on squat, 3 singles on bench, 2 singles on deadlift, and it was just a skill day. Most bodybuilders and powerlifters, if they come to the gym, they're going to train very hard. So if every time you come to the gym you train very hard, you may need to take easy days, light weeks, or off days. It just totally depends on how you train. So I can't tell you whether, because I could construct a program where logically I think, you know what, all we're going to do on this day is calf raises and bicep curls, and the next day we're going to do squats and bench press. You'd probably be fine. That could count as your off day.
Exactly.
But the principle is that if you're training hard enough to induce overload, because we're not perfect magicians with a crystal ball, we're probably going to induce a little more overload than we can recover from. So we should have cyclical periods where we either have an easy day, an easy week, or an off day, or even a couple days off, depending on how our program is set up and how it's inducing overload. So if you never take any days off, unless you're progressing great and you just have a really good rhythm with your body and you do have some very easy days in training, that's probably not a good idea.
I relate to this question so much. I work so hard on my calves, but they still skinny ass.
Yeah.
Is it genetics?
Well, every muscle group is genetics. It's just the calves are more obvious because, so for example, some people don't have great attachments for their bicep. They might have a small gap here or a large gap, but the amount of gaps you can have in your Achilles tendon, being one of the longest tendons in the body, it can be the entire length of your ankle. And you might just have this bee sting at the top. Yeah, so even if you grow that softball, it's never going to be a basketball. So I think it's much more important to remember that you can't change the attachments of your tendons and just focus on improving relative to where you started. So I think it's very important to treat it like any other muscle. Make sure that you are getting a good mind-muscle connection. Don't bounce in calves, because again, that really long tendon, that stores a lot of elastic energy. So if you're doing these guys, you're probably not actually getting a lot of muscular tension. So I would say take the slow eccentric under control, pause for about a count of 1 or 2, and then come back up and use a full range of motion. And then I would try making sure that once you've got that form down, then try increasing your frequency and volume. Don't increase the frequency and volume if you have bad form and you don't have a good mind-muscle connection. Because you don't want to take a faulty motor pattern and a bad mind-muscle connection and essentially something that you're training something else, it's not the muscle group, and then put a bunch of volume on top of it. That's the good way to get tendinitis or plantar fasciitis in the case of calves. Once you have that really good mind-muscle connection, good form, and then if you start to find that your calf raises in an individual workout are suffering, like if you try to do 10 sets of calves in a single workout, don't do that. Just train them more frequently. That way you can actually keep that quality nice and high.
Best calves exercises?
Some people have a really tough time keeping their foot in the right position on a standing calf. They slip off, they don't have the right footwear. I really like doing them on a leg press instead of a standing calf raise.
Leg press.
Yeah, that way you're not loading the shoulders. Because if you're doing a lot of squats and deadlifts and hack squats, and then you have to start doing calf raises every day, you might start noticing your hips and your spine are getting tired. Because you can actually get quite strong on a standing calf raise. That's a very efficient lever. So being able to sit down and do it on a like a seated calf press, sorry, like one of the machines where you're straight leg calf press machine or on a leg press, that's a really good tool.
How about the seated?
Seated's okay. You know, like the soleus, if it grows, it does push the calf out primarily, but you do also get to train the soleus from a straight leg calf raise. So I think, yeah, do some bent leg, do some straight leg, but primarily straight leg. And if you are doing a lot more volume, I would start doing leg press or the machine so you're not always loading your spine with the standing calf raise machine.
Alright guys, next question is about volume. How much volume is enough when it comes down to muscle building?
Enough that you see progress. So the amount of volume you need to progress is going to be very individual. Some people will progress just fine with 5 sets per muscle group. Some people will need 20. But most people are going to fall in the center of the bell curve, right? And if you're a well-trained lifter, a good place to start based on the data we have is right around like 10 sets per muscle group. So 10 working sets that are at least moderately hard. So we're talking about falling between a 5 to 10 RPE, somewhere in the 6 to 20 rep range. That's where most of your training should occur, right? So if you look at how across the week, how many sets you do per muscle group, split it up, start with 10, and then if your loads or your reps are slowly increasing, that's enough volume. And as soon as you're not progressing, that's when you might add 10 to 20% more volume, which is only going to be 1 or 2 more sets per muscle group. Don't increase volume because you think the grass is greener on the other side. Only increase volume when you're no longer progressing. If you're plateaued, exactly. So start with 10 sets, and that's actually a significant amount of volume, and it's very likely to be too much, or to the point where it's way too much for you, or actually regressing, or it's suboptimal. And then only increase if you find that you actually are plateaued.
How about for beginners, like the difference between beginners and more advanced trainees?
Yeah, I would say a beginner, like a true beginner, if you've never lifted weights before, you can do half that amount of volume and primarily just focus on motor pattern development and becoming proficient with the basic lifts, like a horizontal press, a vertical press, a horizontal pull, a vertical pull, and then a hip hinge and a squat pattern. It doesn't have to be barbell squat, bench press, or deadlift. That could be an RDL, an incline press, a cable row, lat pull down, etc. So, you know, learn the basics of the gym and only do as many sets as you need to actually learn the movement. So that might only be like 1 to 2 sets per exercise that are hard. And then only once you've kind of seen that initial strength plateau, then you can start going to 10 sets of muscle group.
So it's really okay to start slow.
In fact, it's better. You can do more volume after you've done your skill work and you've become a proficient lifter on some of these very low skill movements. Like you can do a machine curl, you can do, a lateral raise, something that you really can't mess up. Feel free to get more volume there, and that'll, satisfy that inner excited person who's new to lifting, but it won't get in the way of you learning how to be a lifter.
This one is cardio. Better timing for cardio. Before, after training, or on another day.
Right. So I think the most important thing to remember is that cardio is completely optional. Cardio isn't a magic tool for fat loss, it is just a way to increase energy expenditure. So unless your goals include being a better endurance athlete, you probably don't want to spend too much time doing that. A little bit's fine. Like if you want to spend a couple days per week doing some cardio, like cycling for a long period and getting a good sweat, feel free. But if you're doing that every day, that might slow down your rate of progress. Another thing you really want to avoid is high impact cardio, like sprinting is a great way to strain a hamstring. That's very common in lifters. And in general, you want to make sure that your cardio does not create fatigue that impacts your lifting. A great option if you want to increase your calorie expenditure and age your cut that doesn't quote unquote count as cardio is track your steps. A lot of people are finding that their step count is very low these days. You spend all your time watching YouTube and only an hour, like 5 days a week training, and your step count, if you have a desk job, might only be 3,000 steps per day. So the first thing I would do is maybe try to increase that to say 5,000 steps, and then see how your cut goes. Eventually, you probably want to work up to around like 7,500. That's a good number that's decently associated with general health. And then if you're actually cutting, you can try to get it to that magical 10K mark.
That's really funny that you mentioned that, because as in Taiwan, we use a lot of scooters.
Right.
Scooter everywhere.
Yeah.
Go to 7-Eleven, corner shop, scooter. Yep. It's like literally 5 minutes walk, but we take the scooter.
So. At the very least, take a bicycle, right?
True.
You could go like bicycle in the off season, walking when you're cutting, so you can burn a little more calories or something like that. And that way you don't even notice it. It doesn't take time out of your day. It's a good opportunity to listen to a podcast, do some continuing education, do some reflection. You could have a guided meditation while you walk. Send a message to your loved ones, catch up on social media, so it's not actually taking away from time you're interacting with someone else. So you're not at dinner with a significant other on your phone. Put the phone away and get it out on your morning walks. So it's a great opportunity to find a way to burn calories, because it's weightlifters, bodybuilders, powerlifters, enthusiasts who are trying to get as big or as strong as possible. Cardio is optional. But it is helpful potentially to have a consistent energy expenditure and to maintain a higher output when cutting. But it doesn't have to come from cardio, because we aren't trying to become better endurance athletes, we just want to burn calories.
So literally, if we don't do cardio, we can still get shredded.
Absolutely. I got pretty lean in my last competition season that just ended. I had striated glutes. I was the most conditioned guy in a couple of my shows, and I only did a total of 9 cardio sessions over 34 weeks. However, I did make sure that I kept my step count up, and I was typically around 10,000 steps on average. That is sort of cardio, but I'm not trying to get in shape for a 10K.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can you train at the age of 16? So if you're an adolescent, is it okay for you to start doing weightlifting?
Absolutely. So the most modern guidelines from the American Council of Sports Medicine, National Strength Conditioning Association, and all of the bodies that have looked at the research on adolescent training and have looked at trying to make position stands would suggest that there's no problem with doing resistance training at a young age. We used to think it would cause premature closure of growth plate. That seems to be not the case. Our bodies are very robust, take high forces, and if you think about it, if you've got your kid playing basketball, the amount of force that they absorb and produce jumping and landing from a rebound is probably even more than they get from doing some basic squats. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing safe, guided, progressive resistance exercise. I probably wouldn't go to failure or train incredibly hard. Just remember that you want to certainly avoid any injuries, but weightlifting is actually safer than team sports if you look at the number of injuries that occur per 1,000 hours. Just make sure that your kid is enjoying it, having fun, doing it safely, and is supervised, and is probably not training to failure, and is primarily focused on learning good motor patterns so that they can get a head start when they do become 18, 19, and they're done with their growth spurt, and now they can start building muscle in a very efficient way.
I literally get this question maybe 3 to 4 times a week.
Wow.
Not kidding. And even muscles. How do you train them?
So most of the time when someone comes up to me and says they have uneven muscles, and we're talking like 90% of the time, I can't tell.
I know.
They can.
I know, yeah, so true.
Also, they typically are within their first year or two of training, and they don't have very good overall body development in general. So the answer is just keep training. And also remember that we're not an exact replica of left to right. When we first are gestating in our mother's womb, we split into two cells and then those grow independently. So we have, that's why my left arm couldn't be put on my right arm, it'd be backwards, right? Exactly. So we're not identical side to side, and we're not meant to be. Things that are true imbalances that I think matter is if you have a more than 10% strength deficit on one side versus the other. So try doing dumbbell training, unilateral training for a month, and notice if one side is substantially stronger. So for example, if you can do a 50-pound dumbbell press here, but you can do 55 here for the same number of reps, that's about a 10%. That's okay, but if you can do 60, that's quite different. You know, that's more important than the visual stuff. Probably just has to do with attachments. You know, it just has to do with slightly different muscle structure, and that's just the way your body's built. Don't try to correct that by doing more volume. But if you do have a strength imbalance, what you can do is train the weak side first. So let's say you're in that situation, I can do 60 for 10 on this arm, 50 for 10 on this arm. I'll just do 50 for 10 and match it, so it slowly creeps up and catches up. That's probably the best way to do it, in my opinion. And then it might take years, but you'll slowly close that strength gap.
Thank you.
You got it.
Okay, Eric, the first question that I have for you is best rep range for building muscle.
Good question. So the first thing to know is that there is no specific rep range that is mechanistically, for any physiological reason, better for building muscle. The primary way that muscles grow is by receiving a tension stimulus and then starting a biochemical cascade that results in a signal to grow. So that occurs in proportion to how much tension you supply, both the time spent supplying it, the volume of tension, and then the magnitude of it. So that's why the first rep on a set of 50 doesn't do much, but the first rep on a 1RM does, but the whole set doesn't do much because there's only one rep. So that means you have to look at what is a rep range that provides sufficient tension over a long enough period. And in general, what we've seen is that a moderately high RPE, or proximity to failure, and a moderate to high rep range, but not too light. So anywhere, I'd say, from 6 to 20 reps, where you're between, say, a 6 to 10 RPE, so that's four reps to failure, all the way up to reaching failure concentrically, can work. And it's just a matter of programming that appropriately and picking the right movements. If you want to have a high RPE, you want to choose something that doesn't have a high technical demand and doesn't cause a lot of stress. So if you want to go to failure, save it for a leg extension, save it for a lateral raise, save it for a curl, and probably do that in slightly higher rep ranges so you're not loading a single joint too much.
How can genetics affect muscle building results? Do you think genetics are really a game changer for some people?
Well, I mean, if you ask me, do you think genetics play a role in whether you have blonde hair or brown hair? Of course, genetics play a role in everything. They completely dictate a huge amount of the way we look and who we are. So genetics, of course, play a role, but more importantly, it doesn't matter. You can't change your genetics, you can't know, and most of the time when people worry about genetics, they ended up just self-limiting themselves. People who think they have great genetics, they typically don't ask the question, oh, do I have the genetics to be good? They just think, oh, this is going to go great. And the expectancy of having poor genetics, we actually have research to suggest that would inhibit your performance. So there's actually research out there where people are told that they have a poor genetic profile for cardiovascular endurance, and then they end up performing worse in a cardiovascular endurance test. So your beliefs about your genetics are probably more limiting than your genetics themselves. So the only way you can know if you have good genetics for muscle building is lift weights hard progressively for 10 years and see where you are. And hopefully by that point you'll have found a love for lifting weights independently of whether or not you have good genetics. And if the only reason you're lifting is to look a certain way, to try to be like your favorite Instagram model, guess what? In 5 years, I'll be lifting and you won't, because you're just a casual fan. You have to truly find a love for this and make lifting a lifestyle and enjoy the process just as much as you enjoy the outcome. We have research on achieving goals, and individuals who focus on the process of the goal rather than the outcome are more likely to actually achieve the goal. So by focusing on, I want to gain X amount of muscle, squat this amount, look this way, look like Frank Zane, look like Matt Ogus, look like you're less likely to achieve that goal than if you simply focus on the day-to-day process of showing up, working hard, being consistent, and enjoying the opportunity you have to lift.
What is, in your opinion, the best training split? Is there a perfect split?
Absolutely not. And the last thing you want to do is just find out about a new split and just copy it from someone. You can do that if you want, but just do it for fun or for experimentation. If there was an ideal training split, we'd all be doing it. I've trained body part, I've trained upper lower, I currently train full body. It doesn't mean that full body was better than upper lower, it's all context specific. So for example, I was recently on Jeff Nippert's channel and I talked about how I was training full body 5 days per week.
Great video.
One of the reasons I train full body is because my legs seem to grow very easily. They're a dominant body part for me. I had pretty good quads, I've always had good glutes, good hamstrings. They don't require much. Even me just doing basic powerlifting training with a low volume, they will at least maintain muscle if not grow. But to get my upper body to grow, I have to do a whole lot of accessory work. Lots of rows, lots of pull downs, lots of direct arm work, lateral raises, and I have to train it frequently with a high volume. I've got to do about twice as much volume for my upper body as my legs to consistently grow. So that means a full body day for me basically looks like one compound movement for legs and then a whole upper body day. But if you're someone who has really weak legs, trying to do a full body split and grow is going to be brutal because you're going to have to do squats, deadlifts, RDLs, leg press, front squats at a very high frequency, and you may never actually have the joint recovery and you might be more predisposed to injury. So the best split for you is a different split for me, and the best amount of volume for me is different than you, and the intensity. And we have different goals. I see a lot of bodybuilders trying to do what I'm doing, training full body, but I also compete in strongman, Olympic lifting, and powerlifting. We don't have the same goals. We don't have the same genetics. We don't have the same training age. I'm 6 foot, you might be 5'6". Why would you train like me? There's no reason to. So get out of the idea that there is a magic split or program, and you need to understand that all programs are just manipulations of frequency, intensity, volume, and exercise selection. Learn the principles and figure out how to make the best program for you.
A bodybuilder then, it's not compulsory for them to do bench press, deadlift, or squat.
Absolutely not. No one is going to ask you when you're on stage, what's your 1 rep max bench press? Or you have a great chest, but did you build it with bench or incline? You go incline, last place, you know? It simply doesn't matter.
Bands, machines, free weight, body weight, can they all build muscle?
Absolutely. The only thing your body knows is whether or not you're supplying tension in a progressive fashion. So if you look at gymnasts, fantastic upper bodies, completely body weight training. Powerlifters, fantastic anterior development, pretty much only doing bench press or variations of it. Olympic lifters, great delt development, great quads, pretty much doing variations of squat, front squat, overhead pressing, jerks and snatches. So you can see many athletes from many different fields building the muscles that are involved in the movements they choose. That's why gymnasts have such great upper body development, because they train in literally every plane direction. They have to use every muscle of their upper body, and that's why they look good. Great. Do they have great legs? No, but that's not the goal of their sport. So as a bodybuilder, that's something to pay attention to. That doesn't mean train like a gymnast. It just means remember that the world is your oyster. There are no rules. You actually have a very forgiving goal. And if you have, let's say, limited range of motion in your shoulder, or old hip injury, or if you just don't like certain movements, you don't have to do that. You can stick with primarily machines, primarily body weight, or a mixture of the two, or you can try them out and see what works best for you. And in general, that's what I recommend. Anytime someone says that you have to train a certain way, that means that they've become too dogmatic and they probably don't know what they're talking about.
Okay, sleeping. How important is it for building muscle strength?
Unfortunately, sleep is incredibly important. There's numerous studies showing that even just getting something like 6 or 5 hours of sleep compared to 8 hours of sleep for even just a matter of weeks can inhibit fat loss, impede your ability to utilize nutrients and partition them, and negatively affect muscle building, or at least muscle retention when you're in a deficit. I do think resistance training offsets a lot of that, and if you have good sleep quality, it can offset a little bit of poor quantity. But in general, most people, if you're worried about your program or your nutrition and you're not sleeping 8 hours a night, you've got the cart in front of the horse, right? Don't ask me any question about nutrition or training until you're sleeping at least 8 hours a night. Even if you're not able to stay asleep the whole time, get in bed, put your head on the pillow, and don't look at your phone for 8 hours per night. And until you're doing that, you're wasting your time focusing on other things.
Now, when it comes to supplements, what supplements would you say, okay, this will really make a difference? Is there any?
None. So I think the most important thing to remember is that the word supplement means it's supplementary. It is even creatine, which is the most well-researched, has the largest effect sizes and the most consistent statistical findings of all the research supplements out there. You probably wouldn't even notice the difference if you were given a placebo or not over the course of multiple weeks. Does it make a measurable difference? Yes. Would you be able to tell? Probably not unless you're actually weighing yourself, because you will gain some intramuscular water, which is nice, get a little fuller, and you might see your scale weight go up, say 1 or 2% over the course of a few weeks taking creatine. But if you weren't weighing yourself, you might not even know that you were taking the most effective supplement on the planet. So I think it's really important to make sure that you're well educated. You want to be a late adopter with supplements. Don't take the newest thing that came out on the market, because there has never been a supplement that is actually going to do much. But there have been supplements that have come out that end up doing not only nothing and just burning a hole in your wallet, but actually being counterproductive. So for example, there was a testosterone booster that came out not too long ago, the aspartic acid. The first study that came out showed it boosted testosterone. The next study that came out said it didn't boost testosterone. And the next study that came out showed it actually dropped testosterone. Now, do we know which one it actually does? Not really, but there's a chance that it can actually be harmful. And that's true in almost every case of every supplement. So you don't want to be the person who's buying the first one off the shelf. It's not like an iPhone that you can return. It may have a physiological effect on your body. And even in the best case scenario, it's not going to be that big of a difference at all.
Alright guys, so that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed the video. And I wanted to say thank you, Eric.
My pleasure.
My honor.
No, I really appreciate it.
I'm really grateful for this. Honestly, I came to Singapore just to see you guys, and I'm having an amazing experience. And for the first time, we're bringing this kind of knowledge to Taiwan and to many other Asian countries.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to all of you for watching. Thank you for having me on. It is truly an honor and a privilege. And you know, my goal is to try to help as many people as possible. And if I restrict my exposure to English speaking in the West, then I'm not doing my job. So thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I hope you found this helpful.
Like the video, consider subscribing, and I will see you next time. Thank you.